Hello all and welcome to my video. I hope you're all having a lovely day. Today we're going to be talking about Daredevil. As you can see, I'm a fan. I got comic books and more comic books, Funko Pops, red tinted sunglasses, and I'm dressed like him. So you know I'm a big fan. So without further ado, let's get started. Today we're talking about Daredevil, and we're going to be talking about Daredevil through a psychoanalytical analysis point of view. And more specifically, I'm going to be talking about the defense mechanisms each character uses. What is a defense mechanism? Well, a defense mechanism is an unconscious psychological mechanism that reduces anxiety arising from unacceptable or potentially harmful stimuli. Before I get into the analysis, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the plot and the background on the Netflix original series Daredevil. So, Daredevil is a Netflix original series. It is based off the Marvel superhero Daredevil. As you can see, he has plenty of comics for you to read. If you want to check them out, I recommend them. And this TV show series started in April of 2015. It's a great show and I really liked it. And it didn't deserve to be canceled, so #save Daredevil. Anyway, the show is about Matthew Murdock, who was blinded at a young age in an accident. Matthew grows up to become a lawyer, and he wants to help people in need. This leads to him becoming Daredevil, a masked vigilante and the protector of Hell's Kitchen in New York City. Throughout the series, the viewer can see that Matthew Murdock and many of the other characters, they use defense mechanisms to deal with their trauma of just living in a Marvel superhero TV show. The two characters I'm going to be talking about today are Matthew Murdock and Kingpin. The first character I'm going to be talking about today is Matthew Murdock. Matthew struggles with a lot of things in his life, such as the murder of his father, being blinded by toxic chemicals at a young age, losing his hearing at times, dealing with complicated relationships, not knowing his mother, and plenty of other things that has created conflict and trauma throughout his life. So one of the defense mechanisms that he uses to cope with this trauma is fantasy. Now, what is fantasy? Fantasy is the tendency to escape reality to resolve internal and external conflict. It is also escaping reality by focusing inward, imagining revenge or your own death, and a lot of excessive daydreaming. Matt uses fantasy to talk to visions of Kingpin, his archenemy, and his murdered father throughout the third season of the show. In these visions, these two characters, they talk down to Matt and they say things like, it's all his fault, that's why he has no friends, that God doesn't care for him or about him, he has a dark side, the devil's inside him, and that's why everyone leaves him, or gets killed or gets hurt in some sort of way. This is shown throughout many episodes, but one episode in particular is called Revelations. In this episode, Matt visualizes himself talking to his father and murdering Kingpin. The anger that Matt has held inside of him about his father being murdered, the accident that blinded him, his mother abandoning him, and with everything else he has to go through, that all gets channeled into these negative fantasies that leads to him acting out. Now, Matt is a very interesting character. He won't break the one rule of murder, but with all of the trauma that is building up inside of him and all that anger, it leads to him channeling it all into these negative fantasies. And that leads him to acting out. That leads him to throwing guys off roofs into dumpsters. This leads to him beating up everyone he sees. This leads to a very poor lifestyle for him. And it all affects his behavior. Even though he's trying to do good, it affects him so negatively that it makes him kind of go into a down spiral, and it's very, very dark stuff for a Marvel superhero show, especially compared to like the MCU where they're always winning the day, and yes, there's conflict, but they always get through it. This is more gritty, complicated type stuff. And that's why these defects mechanisms can be seen, because these characters are dealing with all of this stuff and they have to process it somehow, and that's through defense mechanisms, and of course that leads to them acting out in certain ways and causing complex, conflicted, and emotional relationships with these characters. So we just finished talking about Matthew Murdock and the struggles he goes through throughout the series of him acting out and using fantasies and how it affects him negatively. So let's turn to a different side. Instead of looking at a hero, let's look at a villain. So we're going to talk about Kingpin and his defense mechanisms. Now, Kingpin is Daredevil's arch enemy. He is the Kingpin of New York City. He is a very large and impulsive character with a lot of complicated relationships as well. What defense mechanisms does Kingpin use? Well, throughout the series, you can see that Kingpin uses acting out. Now, what is acting? Well, acting out is an unconscious expression or impulses that a person does without being aware of the emotion behind it. Kingpin does this several times throughout the series. In one episode called Reunion, Kingpin learns that Matthew was not killed, since Kingpin was trying to kill him. And Kingpin's tendency is to act out in anger when things don't happen the way he wants them to. Because of this, Kingpin suffocates a person who delivered the bad news about Matt. And in another episode that I can't remember the title of, it will be on the screen, Kingpin also uses acting out when he murders his father. And he also uses acting out several other times. Whenever he gets mad or gets bad news or angers, he goes and he hurts someone, kills someone. And all this causes him to act very negatively. And this follows him throughout his entire life. All this together creates a character that people fear, because if you make him mad, he is going to retaliate in a negative way. Archetypes play a role in the psychoanalytical analysis as well. So let's talk about Matthew and the archetype which he has. He is a hero archetype. He's a person with great strength and courage and is always willing to risk his life for the greater good. An example of this is in the episode titled Into the Ring. The viewer can see that Matt is trying to save a group of girls who are being kidnapped by human traffickers. He doesn't even hesitate. He jumps in and he fights and tries to save these girls. And that's an example of him being a hero through his vigilante work. Now you can look at this hero archetype and apply it to his lawyer work as well. He is a lawyer and he wants to help people. And how does he do this? He helps Karen Page. Karen Page was framed for murder and she had no one willing to help her. So what does Daredevil do? What does Matt do? Well, he helps her without hesitation, and Matt's actions play really well into this hero archetype. After all, he is a superhero. So now that we looked at a hero, let's look at a villain. So we're going to look at Kingpin's archetype. Now, he is very uncontrollable, filled with rage, strength, and violence, and this is seen through his actions and just overall the type of character that he is. And he's also willing to protect the one person he loves, Vanessa, the one woman he loves and is willing to lay down his entire life and give it all up to protect her. So that suggests that he's a monster archetype. A monster archetype is a character that usually is very violent, very uncontrollable, but is willing to protect the one person that they love. And this is Kingpin in his entire character arc. This is what he does. An example of this is in the episode In the Blood. In this episode, he is out of control. He is very violent, and this can be seen when he attacks or fights a Russian gang member. He beats him up, slams his head into a car door. It's very violent and very uncontrollable. No one tries to stop him at all, and this suggests that he is the monster archetype. Later in the series, he meets Vanessa and falls in love with her. He protects her and is willing to do anything to make sure she's protected, and he's willing to put her safety in front of his needs. And again, this supports the monster archetype. So, a small recap about what we've talked about today. Today we talked about psychoanalytical analysis and how it applies to the show Daredevil. Daredevil, the show, uses many examples of defense mechanisms and archetypes. So first, let's talk about Matthew Murdock. He uses the defense mechanisms of fantasy. He imagines talking to his enemy, talking to his dad, and all of this build up about his doubts and his anxieties. And of course, he is a hero archetype. He's always willing to help people no matter what, whether they have money, whether they asked for it. If he sees someone in need, he's going to help them, and that is what a hero does. And then looking at a villain like Kingpin, he has defense mechanisms and archetype as well. He uses acting out to cope with things when they go wrong. He is very angry and uncontrollable, and he takes all that and he acts out. Usually results in someone being injured very badly or killed. And this translates into the monster archetype. Again, he is very uncontrollable, filled with rage and violence. But at the same time, he's willing to forget everything and protect the love of his life, Vanessa. So, altogether, these show a little bit inside of what the characters are like and what the creators were trying to go for when writing these stories out. And all of this comes together as a psychoanalytical point of view. So I hope you all enjoyed watching this video, learning more about Daredevil. If you did, go ahead and like the video. I also hope you've learned more about the psychoanalytical analysis and what it is and how it can be applied to a TV show when looking at defense mechanisms and archetypes. So go ahead and subscribe and share this video with those you think would like it. And until next time, bye!